Hey friends, welcome back to BIMvoice. Today we have again with us a guest of honor, the technical director of Building Smart, Leon van Berlo. And we are going to discuss about something very interesting that has generated a lot of interest, a lot of hype, a lot of enthusiasm, but also a lot of skepticism in AEC. And I'm talking about nothing else than IFC 5. To be honest, I met Leon, I think it was roughly 2 weeks ago at the openBIM conference organized by Building Smart Poland. It was in Warsaw. And if I were not there and if I would not met him, I would have still been skeptical about this. But being there, I had the chance to exchange a few words with him, and that made me very curious to learn more about it. Because I'll be honest about it. The first thing and the most important that I see also in my posts about IFC5, because I made a few posts about IFC5, have been about, is it actually, like, if IFC5, we talk about IFC5 now, we just got out IFC4X3 last year, and there are very few people who are really using it, right? So now we talk about IFC5. I'm going to use IFC5 like in 2030. This was my initial understanding, and I see the same in many other people's head. So Leon is going to clarify on that and going to explain to us why that is not the case and why it's actually different and why we should even consider believing this. Hey, Leon, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Very happy to be here. Thank you. It's an interesting proposition you put out there.
Honest, that's why I'm a simple man. I just share
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
think.
Putting on the pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think about this? But like, let's start somewhere more basic. Like, what's happening with IFC5? Like, what is this? When it's happening? Like, what's the status with it? And then try to answer
Yeah.
to my question and other people.
Well, stuff is happening, that's for sure. I think it's I'm already happy with that. So this has a long history, right? I mean the roadmap where we announced IFC5 was published, I think, 5 years ago in April 2020. That was part of a wider initiative. Obviously, we have a new BSDD, we have IDS. There's a lot of different components that are part of that drive towards actually overarching interoperability in multiple domains. And IFC5 was just one of the topics in there, um, and it's a topic that has been lingering for quite a while. It has been there's been a task force, there's been exploring, there's been an academic paper about it, I think 2 years ago, but it was always a little bit in the shadows, I would say. But I think it's about a year ago now that the first public results came out. I think we called it pre-alpha release around this time, maybe a little bit later, around summer last year, where we said, okay, now we've had the inspiration from a lot of different things. I mean, Montreal, we invited the summit in Montreal. When was that? Like 2022. We invited a lot of software vendors to talk about how they had their internal data storage, how they used entity component systems, how they explored new technologies, what the common denominator was. Then we looked at other initiatives like USD, Universal Scene Description. We looked at other initiatives from OGC. So there's been quite a long preparation phase, I would almost say. And then all of a sudden, magically, there was this pre-alpha. Yeah, but by that time, we lost everyone already because people thought, well, this is such a long project and typical building smart fashion, lots of talking. But yeah, when the pre-alpha came out as like a first position statement, like this is the direction we're going, what do you think? The people that actually looked at it were quite enthusiastic. And that kind of slingshotted us into the situation where we are now. We now have something out there that we call the alpha version of IFC5, and I think it's pretty close to what it's going to be. And I think that's why you got excited. The core is so simple, so predictable, so easy to implement, and you can already have such a wide range of classes and properties and topics because those are already defined in the previous versions. that it makes it very very appealing for people to start working with. So everyone that touches it, everyone that looks at it, within days, I'm getting text messages and emails with screenshots that they actually got it to work already. And I think that's indeed quite exciting. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. You touched on some things that I was not aware of before as well. Um, as you mentioned, you started talking about this like 5 years ago or four, whatever. But not a lot has really happened, or at least that was like me as a somebody outside the group and so on. I didn't follow closely the development of IC5. So it's good to see actually. It was good to see when the course came around your course. And I hope we get the updated version with, I don't know, is going to be
Yeah,
beta after alpha? Is that what is going to happen?
probably. Yeah. That's the
Okay,
idea. Yeah.
okay. And but for me, the most important reason why I started to get interested in this is exactly that one, because I told you, like, according to the history of releasing IFC versions, it's like it takes many years until it's it gets out and then until
Yeah.
it's started to be used in projects, right? And you told me that's not going to be the case. And
Yeah. No, I
why?
think historically, I mean, IFC was defined using the step standard in an express schema with a lot of property sets. And it was this one big monolithic standard. And the more you want to put into that standard, the larger it becomes to maintain and the more difficult it becomes to maintain. So every time you want to do an update, the longer it takes. So the time between each cycle was becoming longer and longer. So yeah, that's one of the first things that you need to deal with. You're going from a monolithic standard that you then cut up into different substandards per use case towards something that really works from a core perspective in all of the domains, and then you want to add additional modules or extensions or whatever you want to call it on top of that core. And those extensions and modules could have a separate release cycle. So that's indeed a core principle of the current IFC. You have this, of the new IFC5. You have this core that we're going to define. It has objects. Objects have properties, and you can add a lot of different additional information to it. But then the definition of all of these semantic modules that we have now as well in IFC. There's an architectural domain, there's a structural domain, there's a rail domain, infra domain. All of these additional modules, we already have them, and we need to nicely separate them, clean them up, and then publish them as separate modules. But the core of IFC5 doesn't have to wait for that because we already have that, and we can publish those as separate modules. So what we're going now for is really to publish this core to make sure that it does work in all of the different domains. And then in parallel, or maybe even just a little bit later, we can have these individual modules, and they can have separate release cycles as well. So
Okay.
that's really speeding up the development massively.
Uh-huh. Okay. That sounds like, so if I understand this correctly, this is not just going to be like a newer version with just some new features. This is like a restructuring of
Yep.
IFC itself. So you go away from step, right?
Yes. Yep.
And what is this new thing, and why is important to do it, and how are we going to benefit of this?
Yeah, I think it's the going away from step was not an objective itself. I mean, it's not that long ago that we said we can still do this in step technology, and then also the threshold, the change isn't that radical, and when we can keep the threshold low and use the same geometry kernel, et cetera, et cetera. But eventually, yeah, like I said, we got inspired by a lot of different things. I think in Poland, I showed you this slide as well, where you have the current IFC, you have JSON, the JavaScript object notation format. There's ECS, Entity Component System, which is something that is widely used with a lot of software developers in our industry. And this USD format, Universal Scene Description, is also something that brings use cases and workflows that we really want, like incremental updates, like coordinating on the same data with multiple people, where you can really share different opinions and coordinate on that. So the JSON format was chosen more like out of convenience because a lot of tools support it, and then at least we can start talking about the core principles, and we have something to exchange and talk about. So it's easy to talk about JSON when it's on screen because everyone can read it. With an idea like, okay, that's not going to be the final format, but at least we can move on and we can decide on something else later.
Okay.
Yeah, you know how these things go, right? And eventually, there was a reason why we originally chose for JSON, because it was such a low threshold. There is no real better alternative. We looked at binary formats as well for speed, but yeah, in the end, 3D visualization in JSON is also pretty fast. So it seems that the JSON format is there to stay.
Okay.
But yeah, so like I said, it's an inspiration between a lot of different things. If you do want incremental updates, if you do want a modular publication, yeah, then of course you can do it in STEP as well with the newer ISO standards of STEP, not the one that the current IFC is using. But it would be a lot more difficult. And what we really want is to lower the threshold to have super reliable implementations, super reliable data exchange. And the best way to do that is to make something that has the lowest threshold as possible that people can really implement in a couple of days.
I think that's very important because that way you can get so many people, more people involved. More people, like, let's not even talk only organizations, right? But there are many people, like even engineers, who play around with JavaScript or something like that. So a lot of people understand when they look at the JSON file, they can understand what's happening there. So I think that actually this is a great idea, and I think maybe this will solve the fact that we know like many people have had issues with the how large some IFC models were, and very difficult to troubleshoot them or to be used at all, right? So I think this is going to address. Do you think this is going to address?
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I mean, I think large files will always exist when you have a large data set. So, but I think in this day and age where you have terabytes, petabytes of information, a large file of, what is it, 500 megabytes or 1 gigabyte should not be a problem. And the fact that it is a problem has something to do with the step format, but also something to do with how the standard was created. There are so many networked relationships inside the standards that it makes it really hard to stream the data when you read it in. I mean, there's a lot to say here, but I think the base principle is that yes, there are not a lot of tools out there that deal with steps, so there is not a lot of optimization going on as well in that file format. And when you work with JSON, it's like I said earlier, same with the JSON geometry. If you want to optimize that, there are millions of people already doing that. So we don't have to do that anymore. So you're kind of tapping into an ecosystem that makes adoption a lot easier for us.
Yeah, that's the best for the industry, right? The more people involved, the better it is. The less resistance, right? And like, let's not even talk about now about the other elephant in the room, actually, the very important one, software implementation, right? Because until now we know that this has been a real issue for many reasons. I will not, but it's been difficult to get a software certified for export or import for IFC, right? How is this going to change?
Well, I think IFC is going to change. So if you're a software implementer and you want to implement IFC, it's really hard, and not just because it's a step format. It's a huge standard, and you've got a schema. Normally, a software implementer takes a schema and then generates some code already as a starting point. That's almost impossible with the current publication of IFC, and then you still have a schema without all of the presets and the properties. Then you have to read through the documentation that in some situations the behavior of object is different, and in some situations you have to link geometry in a different way. We used to have MVD-XML for that, but then you need to implement MVD-XML first to automate that. So you need to implement another standard so you can automate the first standard. And then there's still in the text like 300 exceptions mentioned in the documentation that you all have to manually implement. I mean, I've seen software vendors that do this in 6 months. That's impressive if you implement a standard in 6 months.
Wow.
And in reality, they don't do it in 6 months because it's still only half of the standard is implemented. So we made it way too difficult for software vendors to implement this consistently because it is not consistent. There are too many exceptions. There's too many rules. There's too many if this, then that kind of use case driven exception. So that is the part that needs to change. We can talk about JSON and all of this fancy technology stuff and USD and whatever, but in the end, in reality, this is about making IFC much more predictable and making it a lot easier to reliably exchange data in the industry. So if you increase the reliability of data exchange, you have to increase the predictability of the standard. And by doing that, you automatically lower the threshold for implementation. So all of these software implementation, all of these timelines, the difficulty are all kind of side effects of really creating a stable standard.
I see. But can you tell me something concrete? You mentioned like it used to take like 6 months. It was a good time. What should we expect going from now on? I know it's speculation. I know I will not put you.
No. It's very public information. So I always said from scratch, you have to be able to implement the IFC standard, the core, within 2 days. That was the ambition. And it was intentionally an ambitious ambition.
Compared to the reality, to the existing ones, yes.
Compared to the existing one, it's unrealistic almost. But compared to, let's be realistic here, compared to exchanging BIM data, which is a couple of semantic terms, properties, geometry, some relationships, it doesn't have to be that difficult. There are alternative standards out there. This .BIM format, Speckle. There are so many other formats out there that are a lot easier and that are such a low threshold that why can't IFC do it within 2 days? So that was the ambition, and of course, if you don't reach 2 days, but it's a week, then it's still massive improvement compared to the 6 months to a year that you currently have.
It's unbelievable.
But what we currently see, so the people that have been following the development can implement IFC 5 within 2 days, and the people that have not been following it and just look at the GitHub repository from scratch, look at the examples, have it up and running within a week. So
that's crazy.
Like I said, it's not there. There's a couple of example code snippets out there as well. We have an open source viewer to visualize IFC 5, these alpha files. I think it's 400 lines of code, maybe it's 600 lines of code by now. This should be doable. And this is again this is the KPI that we have as a side effect of creating a reliable standard.
Oh, this sounds amazing. I don't know, everyone watching here, I hope like this will make you feel very excited about this. And I really hope that we see this backed by facts when this is going to start to roll out even more.
As a caveat, we're not there yet, right? So this is like the smallest core that we can find. It's objects with classes, with properties, some relationships in there. It's the start, but if you already see we're already supporting all of the current use cases from IFC. We have incremental updates, deltas, whatever you want. So I think the current functionalities of this core are already more than the existing IFC. But yes, we still have to integrate all of the semantics from the different domains as well. And you don't really never know what you're going to bump into.
Yeah, well, I still can live with few weeks or months, man.
Yeah,
this is like compared to years or decades. Like it's a huge. It looks a huge difference, at least from what.
Yeah, and at some point there is this like cutoff point, right? I mean, if it takes more than a couple of weeks, then then you have to conclude that it is starting to be too complex. So it's also scoping. So we should also be able to say this, if it becomes too complicated, then we
Yeah.
should scope it and say this has to be the reliable part. It has to be 100% reliable. And if you have an additional use case as an exception, maybe,
Yeah.
we can't keep on accepting every kind of use
No.
case that people come up with behind their desk.
Should not be core. Should be something on
Yes.
top of that, but not the core. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Exactly.
The next tricky question. Let's say I am AutoBIM authoring tool, BIM tool. And what will I need for the certification? Like how is the certification process going to be with Building Smart? Like, because I think they are going to need some proof that they are certified to export to good IFC 5 models, or what can you tell me about this?
Yeah, maybe I have a little bit of a exception opinion on this. I don't know, but I don't think that using certified software should be regarded as that important. You need to exchange a valid IFC data set, a file, or through an API, however you want to do it. That the data that you're dealing with should be according to the standards, and you can verify that, you can validate that, you can digitally sign it. Where it comes from doesn't really matter. If it comes from a non-certified software tool or a certified software tool, it doesn't really matter. Especially for IFC5, when we're going to support use cases where a fire engineer that doesn't even have an authoring tool is logging into a CDE and then just adds 2 or 3 properties to walls and windows about what the fire rating is, or the designed fire rating, or whatever. I mean, that person is creating data, is creating IFC, and it needs to be according to the standards so it can be integrated and composed with the rest of the data. But is he really using an authoring tool? I mean, all of a sudden a CDE becomes an authoring tool. I don't think it's really that important anymore if it's certified or not. It's about the data that is being exchanged or being shared or whatever you want to call it between two parties. That needs to be valid.
Okay, and how do you ensure that that is valid?
Yeah, you can just easily check it against the schema. I mean, also currently that's really difficult because we have an Express schema and there's not a lot of tools that can check it. And we created this weird additional extension to the Express schema to add p-sets. And then there's exceptions again, and a lot of other additional languages within IFC5. Like I said, currently it's published as JSON. It's also published as JSON schema. So you can, my 15-year-old nephew already knows how we can check JSON data against the JSON schema, because that's also JSON. That's going to be a lot easier as well.
I can't avoid asking this. It's going to be a difficult question. But Building Smart takes makes some money from certifying tools right now, right?
No, hardly.
Was it?
No, so the new software certification works quite different already.
Okay.
So as you know, we have this validation service when anyone uploads an IFC file, also the current IFC 2x3, 4, and 4.3 files. If you upload it to validate.buildingsmart.org, you get a report on if your data, if your IFC file is valid against the standard or not. So it does check against the schema, it checks the syntax, it checks all of these additional things that have been added by Building Smart to it. And then you get a report, normative rules, etc., etc. Then you get a report if it's valid or not. What we do is we use metrics from that database, anonymous, of course, because inside these IFC files that are being uploaded, it also says that which authoring tool has generated it, which version of the tool, etc. So we can create these scorecards from a Building Smart perspective, where we say, well, we found 78 IFC files in our database that come from software tool X with the version 12 or 2012, however we want to call it. I don't want to imply any
Yeah.
kind of tool here. Um, and this is what we see in the metrics. We consistently see that these parts, these functional parts of IFC, are 100% valid. We did see in 4 files we saw an error, so we cannot guarantee that this software tool consistently produces something there. So this is all automated. There's no money involved. The scorecards will be online publicly as well. So we've set up that system once. It did cost some money, but yeah, that's why we're here. We get membership funds from that as well. So it just runs, it automatically updates. It needs quite some maintenance still at the moment because we still add these additional normative rules. There's a couple of interpretation issues as well. So we're still in the phase where it needs quite some maintenance and investment, but at some point that's not necessary anymore. So that's the current new software certification. Also for import, we want to do something similar. At the moment, we have these openly available files that people can import and a checklist. So if you import these files in your tool, you can just go over it, just the geometry match after import. Do I see IFC assemblies in there? Is the information from a type inherited to the instance? All these kind of tricky things. So if everyone does that and fills out a questionnaire, we can also gather some metrics from that to really lower the threshold and make this as easy as possible. So yeah, the business model around software certification is almost non-existent.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So now, if I understand this correctly, there is a lot of upside for any software provider, like to implement support for IFC5.
Yep.
Little time for implementation, no certification required, easy to prove that your tool does a good job by importing models into validation service. So it's kind of a no-brainer, right? It's something that, like, I guess
it's what it should be. Yeah.
at least like hard to come up with excuses, right? And say that we need years or something like that. You are trying to make this as easy as possible.
Yes.
So that
that's the job. Yeah.
Okay. That's amazing.
And let's be honest. That's also, I mean, software certification was indeed always a topic, and also the ISO publication. And there's a lot of things that you hear that need to be in place before vendors start implementing. But with the current IFC5, we already see vendors starting to implement. So if you make it really easy and reliable and predictable, all of a sudden it doesn't have to be an ISO publication anymore. All of a sudden you don't have to have software certification in place. So yes, the job is to make this reliable in the first place, reliable information exchange. And the KPI to do that is to make it as easy as possible and predictable. And yes, all of these nice side effects come automatically out of the box. Yeah.
You mentioned that vendors are already more interested and they are already starting to implement. Can you tell me more about this? Like, do you see like this is one of the reasons that you think that IFC is going to take off, just because more people are willing to start, or not take off, but start getting used?
Yeah. The taking off and the involving a lot of people is, for me, is also a side effect. If we make it to something that actually works, then it will be used. And in the end, it's the market that decides if they find this working or not. So this trying to convince people to do openBIM versus closed. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So you can convince people whatever you want. They also have a job to do. So so yes, for me the challenge is to make this reliable, predictable, and if you do that, then the result is that it's easy to use. And we do see that. Yeah, you already talked about a course that we had online. We indeed put a course online to educate people about the new IFC5. And that was also mandatory for software vendors to join the IFC5 hackathon that we did a couple months ago. And yes, people did come there with software implementations of IFC5. And if you look back on the videos, we also have vendors that are very proud that they exchanged an IFC5 export into an import somewhere else. So so yeah, there's a lot of people that are working on this. Some of them showed it already in February. Others are working on it in the background. I'm not sure how how they would like it if I speak for them, but I'm pretty sure we will see a lot more of that before the end of the year. Yeah,
That's great to hear. Now, something else important. For, let's say, for clients, for project users, for every stakeholder across projects, right? When it comes to, like, do you see a timeline of this? Like, what is something that we can count on? Let's say, like, for me as a user, as a BIM coordinator, interested, hey, Leon, I would like to adopt IFC 5 on my project. What is the timeline here? Like, what should I look for? What should I aim for? What should I try?
yeah. I think so. The ambition that we have is to finalize the core data model within months. And that sounds very ambitious, but remember, we're doing this for 3 years already, almost 4 years now. Um, and, and then when I say finalize, I mean from a Building Smart perspective, together with the software vendors, together with all stakeholders, this has been a very public development. We have it is a GitHub repository. Everyone can comment. It's very, very public. I hope we can finalize the data model of that core part within months. We need that because then only then we can really move on to specifying the API, which I also think is very much a part of the core new IFC5, that you not just define a file format and a file data schema, but also an API. We also want to send it to ISO. We have no control over the ISO procedures. As soon as you start the ISO procedure, you have to attach a draft standard to it. I would hope that within a couple of months we have enough confidence to attach the current IFC5 schema as a draft standard, but then we have to follow the ISO procedure because this is an absolutely new standard. It's not an update from the previous one. You have to follow kind of the normal procedure as well. That takes a while. I think ISO has a timeline that it needs to take a maximum of 3 years, but there's no minimum. So we don't know exactly how long this is going to take. But I also do think that because it is only a core module, when you currently look at the schema, it's not that big.
Shouldn't take so long. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't take so long, but also the input that we would get from all of the national standardization bodies during that procedure is also probably going to be less than with this massive IFC standard with all of the definitions on what is this property mean, what does that mean, how does it relate. So all of the domain expertise is not in the core. So I also expect less comments because it is really a core, really a kernel data standard. So yeah, I have high hopes that we can go through the ISO procedure a lot quicker than we used to as well. Of course, then that's not reflecting the full IFC standard. We also have to bring all of these domain modules through it. But you can already start using IFC5 with its semantics from IFC4 and 4.3.
Okay.
So yeah, there's no simple answer here, I'm afraid. I think you would see IFC5 exports already appearing in software tools before we send it to ISO. I don't know when we but it's the same with the current IFC as well. I mean, we have IFC 4.3 as a final Building Smart standard. Then we send it to ISO. There were updates and tweaks, and it was fine-tuned, and now it is IFC 4.3.2 officially. I think you would see that as well with IFC 5. Just maybe that there's the beta standard might be used a little bit more already than it was with IFC 4.
Yeah, I guess anyway that maybe clients, because it always start with is going to start with clients, maybe software vendors as well. Some of them are going to choose to support this as soon as possible, but some clients maybe are going to wait for this to become like a approved standard before they start requesting this.
I think that's spot on. Yeah, I mean, if software vendors build it in because it's easy for them and it's on the roadmap, then users will start using it. And in that case, it doesn't start with clients; it's just start with users.
Yeah.
But but what we've seen in the past is that clients are also very keen to mandate this, but some of them really do need to have an ISO approved stamp. Some don't.
Okay.
So I think you would see a lot of different adoption tracks this time, actually.
This is interesting. I like when I hear you speaking like this about these details, I feel the same like I told you about ideas. I keep repeating ideas, but that's what I felt with ideas. Like ideas, I started to dabble into ideas in May 2023, and it became an official standard in June 2024. But by then, I was almost using it for 1 year in my
Mm.
project, in my
Yep.
huge project, right? And it was not only me. Like Dion has used it for years, even before it got into a more advanced version. So it's also depending is going to be on like you mentioned users, right?
Yep.
If you see the value, if you see that it works and you can do something. And I think there is also like this, because it's such a huge paradigm shift. It's also going to be this maybe benefit or a bonus for people. Instead of wasting more time implementing or polishing IFC 4x3, maybe I jumped straight into IFC 5 and I go over all that headache. There are still many tools that don't have a good implementation IFC at all. Let's not even talk IFC 4x3. There are very few who actually start to have quite decent, right? And that could be another thing. But yeah, like these are just speculations. We can't have any control.
Yep.
But it looks
But
very bright.
this is important to mention. It's spot on. It's speculations. We don't have control. It is really up to the markets to decide if they want to support this, and how and when. It is really indeed. It's not that if we start IFC 5 now, people will not implement IFC 4 to 3. It's really their own choice, and there's no way to force anyone. And I think that's also the beauty of openBIM, right? I mean, the whole reason why open standards exist is so that everyone can choose their own software tool and has the freedom to define the workflows the way they want to work and what is the most efficient for them, while still having the ability to collaborate with others. So this whole idea of having the freedom to define your own environments in the best way possible for you. Yeah, that freedom goes in every direction, right? We can't force vendors to implement openBIM. We can't force people to use openBIM if they want to do it in a different way. That's really part of the principle as well of openness.
Yeah, yeah, but again, like I can't stop but thinking like if IFC 5, so in many aspects, IFC 5 looks too good to be true. And if that's the case, like if you're not lying at all, everything you say is true, and everything, not that you lie, but everything that you estimate, like I know you are a nerd, you have a good technical understanding of things and so on. So maybe if you are not really overestimating these timelines and so on, there is a very high chance that people are going to get there. Hey, why should I overcomplicate things and waste and burn money? Because that's what you do. Like you allocate resources to work on something that is going to become dead after the new thing is reborning.
No,
Or no,
no,
come
it's
on.
not that. I mean, the IFC 2x3 is still used in, what is it, 88%, 85% of all of the projects.
Yeah, but that's what I'm
IFC
saying.
4,
From
15%.
IFC 2 to IFC 5, and
Yeah, maybe.
skip
Yeah,
the other things.
we don't know. If it really is the market that decides in the end. I mean, maybe it is too good to be true. Maybe it's not true. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it's because let's also be honest. Um, we started from taking the full IFC 4.3 and then trying to modularize and try to shrink it. At some point, we started the other way around. We started from scratch, really zero, and expanding it. So now we have a very small, lightweight schema that is very easy to implement. But by the time we want to support all of the other stuff, yeah, maybe it is also complicated, and maybe by then it is easier to still use IFC 2x3. Um, but yeah,
No,
that's not the way I see it now.
it's not going to
The
be
way I see
easier.
it is that this is indeed a massive paradigm shift that
Yeah,
is
so
going to make
so
it a
that's
lot
what's
more
going to
reliable.
happen. like, of course, you can't say that you are representing all standards or versions. So, but yeah, like, I think, like, as you mentioned, still IFC 2x3. My project is still delivered on IFC 2x3. Most of projects are delivered in IFC 2x3. I can tell you that I see some projects that are trying to be delivered in IFC 4x3. Still many challenges. The tools, like I told you, are still falling short to that.
Yeah.
So on to delivering according to the expectations. So that's why I'm saying, like, there is like this stigma that it's so difficult to export to IFC. So people, I think, they are going to just swallow this pill and just go and buy the new one, the new version, the new thing. And when they are going to start working with it, and they are going to see that they don't have to feel themselves like in a labyrinth, like with the older formats, that's going to make a huge impact. And I've seen that from people who have looked into, and they got the same feeling that, okay, this looks like something more familiar, like something more easier to
Mm.
read, easier to understand, not so many concepts into other concepts and so on stacked on top of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. But again, that's the whole. I mean, that was the objective. That's how we started a couple of years ago. There needed to be a modernization. Yeah, it should not be a surprise that after 4 years it's finally here. Yeah, if there's people that are still surprised, then I don't know. But at some point you need to take a conclusion that that if something new comes around that's better, then it will be used. If something new comes around
Yeah.
that's worse, it will
Mhm.
not be used. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can tell you, like, so far, like, I can't wait. I can't wait to see that more closer to the final version release of IFC 5, which you
Yeah.
say that it's like few months away. So
Yeah. I think in a few months we have a just to clarify that
mhm.
we have a pretty reliable data schema, so we can start the ISO procedure and we can start the API and we can start the extension modules because yeah, there's I'm not sure how deep you did a dive into the
Uh-huh.
current IFC5, but there's quite an opportunity to integrate other standards as well, like
Sure.
OGC standards and point clouds and even IDS and BCF eventually. I think would be very beneficial to integrate in this new format as well.
Of course.
So there's still a long way to go, but yes, this core data schema is the
Taking
core that
shape.
everything else is gonna be built on. It has
Mhm.
been taking shape for 3 or 4 years. Yeah, I understand that it's a surprise to many that it's now actually here, but
Yeah,
but yes, it is.
that's great. That's great to hear. I'm very, very excited about this. Yeah. Are you ready for some drama? For some doomsday takes? For some doomers questions?
I
Because
guess this is part of my job description, so hit me.
okay. Okay, let's go. I'll share my screen because it's going to be easier for you to follow along. Can you read here? Do you see
Oh
my
yeah,
screen?
yeah.
Okay, so let's reply. Like Nicola is just saying that we are still shifting from IFC to X3 to 4. Makes sense. Yeah, traveling in time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, like this is a real concern and a real thing. So I think many people are going to choose to jump straight to IFC 5. But let's see here. Ivan says this. Sounds like the end of interoperability. I think this is very dramatic what he says here. The end of
Mm,
interoperability. If parts of the scheme are constantly changing, then the level of support for different modules and their versions in different programs will constantly differ from time to time. Before you start saying, I think you already answered to this question, because this is not just a change, just a complete rewritten of the schema, reapproach. Like this is a new paradigm. So to be honest, I think this, like, even if you like it or not, this is not just a minor change or something. Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, I think this is indeed the case where you had previously changes and updates to the schema really involved software implementation. With IFC5, it's much more modular. This is also the reason why we published a new BSDD first with this linked data functionalities with every class and property published under a URI. When you look at the examples we have now, there is an object in there and it's then classified as an IFC wall with a reference to the BSDD. So if you're getting additional modules that indeed have an have an increased release cycle, there would be more properties in there that with references to publications. Doesn't even have to be just IFC5 modules. It can be anything. The current examples that we have references in there to IFC wall definitions of IFC 4.3. So I don't think it's the end of interoperability. I think it's actually strengthening interoperability over multiple versions of IFC. Even with the IFC 5 core, you can refer to new updated modules, but you can even still refer to IFC 4.3 modules as well. I think it's what you said, paradigm shift, and takes a bit to get used to.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I think some software providers could look at this like this because they invested already a lot of time maybe, and they feel that they have an edge right now in the market because they are supporting IFC to some degree. And now when you go and make this, like maybe they feel that they can lose something. But yeah, like it's like we need a radical change. Actually, we need something that can involve everyone and not be so cumbersome as unfortunately it is and it was so many years. So yeah, let's go to the next one, which is a kind of a reinforcement of this one. But let's see, adding a bit more details here. Thanks for sharing, Petru. It is right time to discuss on this. A modular schema is a good one, but as Ivan mentioned, interoperability will become hard in case of metadata. IFC is an open schema based on key as number. So want to see how it is going to adapt with changes with from other modules. If not, we end up again with a large file size due to duplicate data. Actually, data duplication is a very dangerous thing for maintaining quality.
I'm not sure what
I'm
the
not sure
message is here.
either. Like he's afraid of data duplication because like maybe we end up with different files. I'm not sure. Like it's a bit ambiguous to be honest for me as well.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I think even the open schema based on key as number is something that is
doesn't
pretty
make
alien
sense.
to me. Yeah,
Yeah. But I think he's afraid of duplication. But I think.
yeah, me too. That should not happen. I think this is also one of the core. We didn't really touch on that in the conversation, but currently, indeed, when you want to collaborate with people, usually the workflow is you import the full model from someone else, you make changes and then export it again, and then you get a lot of duplication. But yeah, you should not be doing that anymore. And I think IFC5 facilitates a different way of working a lot easier, where you look at the data from someone else and then just provide your additions to it or your changes of opinion to it, and then that needs to be coordinated. But there is this export import workflow that often duplicates things is just not happening anymore with IFC5.
All right, let's go to the next thread. This was the first post I did like last week about this. It got quite a lot of engagement and a lot of comments. Daniel says, I'm very excited about IFC5 as it's a JSON format, and guess whose engine runs on JSON? I'm not sure what he wants to imply here. I think maybe he works with a tool or something like that, and his tool is supporting JSON. I'm not sure. But yeah, do you know, can you provide any more? Do you have any idea? I think he's from the Netherlands. Maybe you know something about what he does.
No, I know Daniel from a period where he was involved in Revit. I don't know if Revit runs on JSON. I think, like I said before, we started in a JSON format because it was easy to communicate with a lot of people on the really core principles of IFC. It's not decided yet that it will be a JSON format, but yeah, more and more we're moving into the situation where we started with JSON and now we're stuck with it. But I think when you look at the biggest, I mean, in the end, it's just a file format. It's a format. If you want to do API exchanges, you're very close to JSON. It doesn't make a lot of sense to do it different. We are looking at binary file formats to improve speed, but there are, I mean, realistically, you're then looking at visualization of geometry, and there are so many engines and toolkits already out there that that are increasing and improving, fine-tuning the speed of JSON serialized geometry on screen. So it just makes sense. Yeah, if you there's in the end, I don't really see a big difference in geometry kernels that take JSON as an import or something else.
Okay. Get ready because this thing is about to heat up quite soon. Ivan, it's very persistent here. So let's be honest, IFC 4.3 as an international ISO standard was released in 2024. The first thing that I touched upon, like this was my first impression as well. The life cycle of the standard is 5 years. It is unlikely that IFC 5 will be adopted before 2029, 2030. That was my estimation as well.
Yeah.
That is if it's ready by then. So far, we know very little about the actual state of the development of the standard. The same exact idea as well. I think we will see a more or less adequate, stable, and complete technical version a year before publication in ISO. But actually, this is the year of ISO publication.
Yeah.
We just figured that out.
Wait, it was launched, I think the pre-alpha version was launched somewhere around summer last year. So yeah, and let's be honest, the IFC5 development started in 2020 with the roadmap. So he's not wrong. It takes a long time.
The same was like I told you, like I thought the same. So that's why what I say here, I thought the same, but I think this time is going to be different. Wait until next week, much more coming on this mid next week. So I'm talking about exactly this interview. So he says that these are, let's say, he likes to develop his thoughts here. So there are rules of international standardization. Frequent change of the technological standard is not accepted because the whole meaning of standardization is lost. Developers simply do not have time to invest in support of standard, its adaptation, and do not have time to recoup the cost of its implementation. Therefore, the standardization system does not allow updates more often than 5 years. In addition, the procedure for approving a new ISO standard, it's a year after the application of the ready draft.
Yeah, I mean, the first part I agree with. If you have frequent updates are not helping also for the adoption, and if software vendors constantly have to put in an effort to implement a new update, at some point they're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
The last part is just not true. Standardization doesn't allow updates more often than 5 years. That's not true. I mean, we're already preparing an update of 4.3 as well in the old schema. Actually, ISO has the ability to have multiple parts to an ISO standard. So if you look for those who have been looking closely, the ISO standard of IFC, the version 4.3 is published as part 1. So we can easily publish part 2 as a new version as well. And this is also necessary for this modularization that I talked about earlier. So the core of IFC 5 is going to be a part X, and then the additional modules are also different parts. So there is no you can update those whenever you want, but when you do update them, the previous one is going to be withdrawn.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
that's very good clarification. One thing before I forget, I'll derail a bit from the comments, but this is important. The course on Building Smart about IFC 5, which was like I started to do it, I didn't finish. I would like to do it again, Leon. When do we get that back? When do we get an updated version of it?
I'm absolutely not going to give you a timeline on that.
Come on.
No, because I have to make it. No, the previous one, as you said, we did a pre-alpha published last year, and then we made a course, and we said, if you come to the hackathon in February, you have to have done the course because you need to be at least at a minimum
that
level of knowledge. Before you join. We don't want to lose. It's a 2-day event. We don't want to lose a day to explain everyone that didn't do their homework. So that was the original reason for the course. There's like 50 or 60 people that have registered for the hackathon, but eventually 1,300 people did the course, which was amazing. And that's also why we said with the update now going from pre-alpha to alpha, there are still quite some changes, I have to say, where the pre-alpha looked a lot like USD. The current alpha that is published is moving away a little bit from that and closer to IFC. So it's getting really into the center of IFC, JSON, ECS, and USD. where the previous version was a little bit more biased to IFC, to USD maybe. So I need to, the old course, it just doesn't reflect the new situation anymore. I have to make the new course, but before I have to make the new course, we need to fine tune how materials are being linked to IFC, because that's obviously a core component. Currently, there's 12 different ways to do materials in the current IFC. That's a core thing that needs to be in the core of IFC 5 and needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
A couple of other things as well. In the previous one, for example, there was a lot of confusion on name, and then there was an identifier. You remember that, right? Yes.
Yeah.
So how are we going to call that? How we're going to name that? It's not going to be name, but identifier also didn't. So there's a couple of still things to be fine-tuned in the examples, and then I can start making the course. And yes, it will then also be available again.
But you let us know. You let us know when that's the case, right?
I wanted this to be online already by this conversation, but
okay.
we need to do this. It's like I said. This is the core. This is going to impact all of the modules. It's going to impact the API. It has to be done carefully. Because it's like choosing JSON for the time being, and then you're stuck with it a couple of years later. If we choose something now for the time being, I'm afraid we're stuck with it. So we have to choose carefully.
Makes sense.
And that needs to be finalized before we create the course. But at some point this summer, I also want to go on vacation. So fingers crossed.
Look, another question outside of the context. API, you mentioned API. What is this API, and what is going to be the impact of these services for users of IFC5? Like, what is going to be the role of this service, or whatever?
I think this comes from additional workflows that are being requested by our industry. I mean, we have new use cases, new workflows like these incremental updates, or just sending my opinion about a fire rating to someone else. That requires a different data standard. But we also have use cases of people that want to not export that to a file, but immediately send it to a CDE, or use cases of people that have a full data set that they want to send to an online energy simulation tool, and then get the results of a life cycle energy analysis over the next 50 years back within seconds or within a minute. So if you do that in an early design phase as a designer, for example, you can easily tweak your design to optimize for energy analysis. You don't have to send it to someone. You just send it to an API endpoint with an energy analysis and get back the result. Same for engineering. If I have a staircase manufacturer, if they publish an API where I can send my staircase design, and they further fine-tune that design into something that they can actually manufacture, and they send back a result or an incremental update or a delta with the additional detailed geometry, with 4D data in there, 5D cost data maybe in there. I want to incorporate that immediately within seconds from an automated online service. To do that, you don't only need to standardize the data that you're sending to and from those online services. You also need to standardize the interface that you connect to. So this is about the simple things like authentication and user management, but also on what are the calls that you're going to make. Are you just sending data and getting something back, or do you want to do something more intelligent when there's a difference between a property or something else? So to facilitate these kind of use cases, these online agents or bots, or however you want to call it, it's necessary to standardize the interface to those online services as well, and not just the data that goes over the line.
Okay, sounds good. Any timeline on that? Short?
No.
Next year?
No, I have no idea on that. It hasn't even started yet. So I think the ambition is to start that in the second half of this year, and then depending on the enthusiasm of people, depending on how far the software vendors that are involved in defining that API have already implemented the data standard, it's very difficult to predict.
Okay, great. Let's go to this one. Let's see. You let me know if this is a nasty comment or not. Gitian says this. Ivan Star, they mean to Building Smart. They developed it using the previous funds, such as UK government funding for BIM and interoperability, but the phasing is for 3 to 5 years to collect strategic funds for it. They will prolong this IFC5 game for a long time. Then the H5 game, in my opinion, better information management, it's a tap dance to put the previous funded development of a real interoperability IFC5, HDA5, or simply IFC5, H5 into a long-term game, Pandora BIM. Perhaps funding for the same thing multiple times. I'm suspecting and being agnostic. And this is an individual opinion. Please check the facts for yourself and make your conclusion. Okay. A
Yeah.
lot of speculations here, but yeah.
Well, a lot of insinuations as well. I mean, I think the last sentence says it all. It's an individual opinion, and
yeah.
I would never post something like that on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The only thing I can say is that indeed IFC5 has no funding at the moment. That's why we're requesting it. It's mainly driven by volunteers at the moment who are putting a lot of time and effort in there. The only funding that Building Smart is putting in there is support of some travel costs.
Yeah.
Most of the IFC5 development at the moment is actually done by volunteers, which is it's very interesting because if you have funding and if you have money, all of a sudden you get a lot of people that want to help with it, and and they are putting their finger up that they want to help. But if you don't have funds, the people that actually have a good heart and want to actually change this are staying. So I think that's currently what we have. We have a really good team. The software developers are software vendors are very involved. They're very committed to this. We have a really, really nice team that is working evenings and hours. We have people that are working on this while their young children are having a nap in the afternoon. So
that's crazy.
It's a very dedicated team.
Very impressive.
Yes, it would be helpful if it's to even speed it up if we have some additional funds. That's why we have the call out there for strategic funding. So if anyone listens to this and wants to accelerate stuff, yes, we're happy to have it. But at the moment, it's a shoestring budget, I'm afraid.
I see. Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. Inge, thanks for sharing, Petru. Looking forward for the new JSON format. Great. Again, Gitian, oh my God, this is long. Let me see if I can browse. So come on, it is time to think broader. Give the big funds to all interoperability developers with fairness, not just Building Smart. I don't know what he's talking to, but yeah.
Yeah, if there are funds.
Yeah, exactly. So you just dispelled all these things with this. But I agree that IFC5 should be a breakthrough for Building Smart to continue in the industry leadership, especially the IFC5 H5. What he means with H5?
Yeah, I think the previous comments was about HDF5, which is a binary format, also part of the STEP family. Actually, I think it's like part 28 of STEP.
Leaving the STEP behind, please.
Yeah, but HDF5 is also STEP, so I'm not sure. Maybe there's a confusion there.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's something else. I don't know.
Yeah, but the industry has fed enough on this beast for decades now. It is eating up the fair competition and the circular economy. IFC is not the only solution anymore, and openBIM is trademarked to calculate the funds till IFC4X3 to date for decades and measure performance honestly. Please don't ignore Building Smart 2. They are in a good position to take up on leadership if they give up a gold rush for authorization and trademarks, ignoring fairness, the narrow-minded. I'm looking for an openBIM that is different from openBIM trademarked, which we still need for some time now. Please create an open space. I don't know what is going on, but again, like my take, like this is my personal take, is that these standards have been around for such a long time, and is not Building Smart problem because people don't use IFC. Like this is my honest outside take. Like this, pointing the finger to Building Smart, which I guess has used little maybe funds for these kind of things, and like I don't know. What do you think? Anything short?
I think honestly, I've also been in this place a couple decades ago, where how can something be open if it's trademarked, but it's the same as how can something be an open standard when it's copyrighted. But that's just how these things work. Actually, IFC is copyrighted by Building Smart International. They are the owner. They developed it. and then it's published under the license that anyone can actually do with it whatever they want as long as they don't change it. So the openness is about open speech and a free speech instead of free beer, right? So you can do with it whatever you want, but as long as you don't change it. And you can do that because the owner and the copyright holder is allowing you to do it. And it's the same with the trademark. It's protected to make sure that it's not being misused. That's unfortunately or fortunately how this works and how it's set up.
All right. Nicola still wrestling with IFC 5 in some teams, but IFC 5 looks with IFC 4 in some teams, but IFC 5 looks like a real lip. AR Shine. It's true that IFC is meant for geometry and information. For some reasons, the industry would really appreciate is material textures also can be transferred alongside. Maybe USD will solve something of that, or
honestly, so yes, IFC is meant for exchanging information, and let's be honest, geometry is also information. Conceptually, you can see geometry as an additional property next to a lot of other properties. You can visualize properties in different ways. You can visualize a specific geometry property in different ways. I would say adding textures is a very specific use case, so that will not be in the core. There might be a module to link textures to it, but let's be honest, there are so many really good open standards out there for visualization. You don't have to use IFC for everything. If you want to put every use case into IFC, it becomes complicated, and when it becomes complicated, it becomes unreliable. So this scoping and focus is increasingly important. What we need to do is have the ability to get from a BIM authoring tool into a visualization tool very reliable. So yes, this link from IFC to USD, for example, but also to a lot of other rendering and visualization formats in the gaming engines, gaming industry, that's important. There are so many really good standards already out there. We should not try to compete with them, try to copy them. We should make it easy for anyone to take the IFC data and transform it to a rendering engine or a visualization tool.
That makes a lot of sense, Leon. I completely agree with that. It's important that it's easy to speak to other standards as well. Mr. Gustavo, let's wait. Well, sir, sorry, I can't. We have to move on. We have to innovate. We have to improve things. Jakub, I'm very curious if the new IFC schema helps to solve at least 1% of the whole industry problem, or it will be like a new JavaScript framework. Front-end developers will understand. I also understand, but I don't think that's going to be the case because there is no other IFC framework, first and foremost.
I think I get the point that it should not be a new shiny thing that eventually doesn't solve the problems. But I think I'm pretty confident that the paradigm shift that we are throwing out there is indeed fundamentally different and not just a shiny polish.
Great. Stepan, what I know about IFC 5 is that it won't be a file format any longer, rather a data standard. Moreover,
just like the current IFC, right? Let's also be clear on that. The file format is step physical file. IFC has always been the data standard.
All right. Moreover, one of the biggest problems that will be encountered regardless is Revit export, because IFC 2x3 was heavily tested by Autodesk back in 2007, but the later formats weren't leading to many user-reported mistakes of it. It will be a big update, but it remains to be seen of which kind. I think we kind of addressed this on many aspects.
I can't comment on how Revit is doing their development. Like I said, the only thing I can comment on is to make it as reliable as possible for them to implement. And then, then hopefully that also eliminates user feedback from things that don't work, because it just works. That's the KPI, right? It just needs to work.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Mahmoud, before moving to Europe, I mostly worked in a closed BIM environment. Everything was smooth, almost la vie en rose. But after a switch to an open BIM market, some cracks began to show. One of the biggest challenges, the 2D representation of elements. IFC often lacks support for symbol-based views, Think of something as basic as showing electrical outlets properly in plans. As a result, we're now asking planners to provide additional 2D floor plans and elevations just so we can relink them into Revit. It's a workaround, but it complicates coordination, especially when multiple trades are involved. openBIM brings transparency, but it still has a few blind spots. Anyway, I'm curious about what's coming in IFC 5.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're trying to create 2D drawings with a standard that is meant for 3D data exchange, then yes, that complicates things.
Yeah. Jose, Petru, many thanks to share your feelings about IFC 5. Yay, Leon. We went through all. Congratulations, sir. You
Well,
won.
we're not there yet.
I can't wait to see the development of this, Leon. Keep me updated.
Yeah, like I said, it's very transparent. Everything we do is publicly online. All of the recordings of the implementer agreements are online. They're on YouTube. The examples and the schema itself is on our GitHub repository. So anyone who wants to follow this can follow this. I'm very aware that people are skeptical. I understand that, but like I said, if you have everyone that did look at this seems to be getting excited. So yeah, feel free.
And I guess if you have any questions about this, you can reach out to Leon on LinkedIn or send him a message or
also,
an email.
Yeah.
And
my email and
now,
phone number are also
I'll give
widely
you
available.
amazing. I'll give also a shout out. He is quiet about this. He has a blog, guys, and you'll find it on his feed right here. Just go here.
Since 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah, but that's great. So just go to his LinkedIn feed because otherwise I don't know, leonvanberlo.substack.com. Okay, so that's another way to get to it. Great. He's secret about this, but you'll find it here.
Instead of replying the same reply to everyone on email, I decided to start to just reply publicly so everyone can read it and I don't have to answer questions anymore. Yeah. Not sure if it's going to work yet.
Yeah, well, you'll see. Maybe you can just like when you get questions, at least you don't have to write again. You can just send a link.
Yeah.
To the
Exactly.
people, right?
That's the idea. Trying to make it easier on myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Amazing. Is there anything else? I didn't give you the chance to say something freely. I interrogated you. Is there anything else you would like to mention?
No problem. So it's also part of my job description.
That you think that
maybe
we didn't cover, we didn't touch?
Maybe so what we mentioned is if people want to get involved, look at the course that's coming up, look at the GitHub, look at everything, all of the examples that are online. But the next in-person meeting that we're having is in August, hosted by Esri in California. So that's also publicly available. We're also welcoming people there. In the last meeting we had in person, we had an IFC5 hackathon where people already started to exchange some data. In the next meeting in August at Esri, we want to continue on that, and we really want all of the vendors that join there to exchange data and to really put this onto a next level again. So yeah, if you want to join that, if you want to see that, if you want to bring your software tool and implement IFC5 as a homework assignment before joining at the Esri meeting, everyone's very welcome.
Where can people read more about this? Just reach out to you, go to Building Smart official page?
You can always reach out to me, but these meetings are called the implementer assemblies. So if you go to our website and you look under events to the implementer assembly, you'll find them as well. This is for the people that have been involved a longer time. They used to be called implementer support groups, and it was really focused on just IFC. Now we're widening the net a bit because there's a lot of different standards and developments going on. So the implementer assembly really brings together all of the different developers of IFC, BCF, IDS, BZD, whatever. They come together for 2 days, and then depending on the most important topic in that period, we focus on that. And obviously these days that's IFC5. So next implementer assembly. All of these meetings are also hosted by the software vendors. Historically, we had the 80th last February at Graphisoft. So the 81st meeting at Esri will be in August. There's a long history here and quite some heritage. So feel free to join that if you're a software implementer.
Sounds good. You heard it, guys. Well, what else can I say? Thank you so much, Leon, for this for sharing all this information with us. Thank you very much, everyone who had the patience to watch and to listen to this whole conversation. I hope you find some value. I hope you get some inspiration. I hope you become as enthusiastic as I am about IFC 5. And I hope you are going to give it a try when it's going to be closer and when Leon is going to share that course with us.
Yes,
Thank you
I'll
so
give you
much.
a heads up when that's close. Yeah.
Thank you so much.